At the heart of the activity of any linguist, and probably one of the more interesting questions for any of us, is the question what we know when we know a language. What do you know? What do you actually know? You probably never ask yourself that, but the first time you do, it becomes really interesting. What is linguistic knowledge? What does knowledge of language actually consist of? Well, really the whole of this set of movies is about that, but let's just focus on some of its general characteristics again, as we have previously on the form and function of linguistic units. This time, instead of my telling you, we're going to do some little exercises, and that is going to happen right through these movies from time to time. We're going to stop, and you've got to ask yourself some questions, because what's really interesting about linguistics is all this stuff is in your head. The English language is currently residing somewhere in your head, and therefore one of the things we can do is see whether we can get it out, find out what it is that's in there. In a way, this is like psychiatry, only without the couch. We're going to find out what's in your subconscious, because most of this, you haven't the faintest clue is in there. We do have some sort of clue that there are words in there, but apart from that, most of it is completely unconscious. So here we go. Hang on and ask yourself the following questions. Let's make a sentence out of some words. These words are not chosen at random, they're chosen with malice aforethought, but let's see what happens. Here are some words. Put them in order, and the order has to make a sentence. Okay, that wasn't difficult, was it? Try some more words. How did you do? Wasn't difficult, was it? Well, the first sentence you'd almost certainly get. A newborn baby sleeps. Are there any other orders? Sleeps a newborn baby. Well, that's okay, but it's not a sentence. A sleeps baby newborn. Definitely very bad and certainly not a sentence. In the next one, what do we get? We get the people live in a greenhouse. A people live in the greenhouse? Maybe. A green people live in the house? That's okay as a sentence. Odd, but it's okay. A greenhouse lives in the people? Definitely very bad. Really bad. The house lives in a green people? Also pretty bad, but grammatically not so bad. Well, if we take the total number of possible word orders that you get from this, those of you who have done permutations and combinations sometime in your mathematical past will know that we've only got a tiny number of possible sentences, but a very large number of possible word orders. Look at this one. The boy kicked a ball. The ball kicked a boy? No. A ball kicked a ball? No. The ball? Yeah, well, very few word orders again. So, there are very few word orders. What about sound orders? Is that an English word? It's a bunch of nonsense. It's just some letters put together. Could it be a word of English? Well, no. Can you say it? The answer is yes, of course you can. It sounds like b'nek, b'nek, b'nek. Yeah, it's perfectly sayable, just isn't an English word. What about this one? Also not an English word yet. Could it be? Blick. Yes, absolutely. That's a perfectly sensible English word. It isn't one, but it could be. So not only are there possible word orders, there are possible sound orders and other orders which just don't work. Here's one that is really weird. Have a look at that sentence. Who's going to dress themselves? Well, the answer is Mary is going to dress herself. Jill appealed to Mary to dress herself. Yeah? So Mary is going to be dressing herself. Let's change one letter. Now who's doing the dressing? Well, the answer is Jill. What have we done? We've changed one letter, which has changed the word from appeal to appear. Well, appear seems to have changed the way in which the dressing goes on. If somebody appeals to someone to dress themselves, one person's going to do the dressing, whereas if someone appears to someone to dress themselves, someone else is doing the dressing. This is very strange. No computer with any brain at all would be able to figure this out. It certainly wouldn't invent a language that did this. Alright, let's have another question. How do you make a question out of these? John is eating his porridge. The question is John eating his porridge? How do we know how to do that? It's automatic. Nobody's got any trouble with it. English speakers can do it. John won't eat his porridge. The question is, won't John eat his porridge? Again, quite easy. Everyone can do it. Not a problem. So what kind of knowledge have you just been displaying in answering the last few questions? Where did that knowledge come from? What was it? Well, it's linguistic knowledge, and what it shows us is that linguistic units, sentences, words and so on, are constructed according to rules. Some of those rules are responsible for sequencing sound and saying some sound sequences are okay in the language I speak and other sound sequences are not okay. There are rules that tell us how we're allowed to put words in order, and other orders are not okay. They're just not English word orders. And if we were speaking Hindi or Japanese, there would also be rules of sound sequencing, rules of word sequencing. They would be different. But those languages would also have their own rules. And it's quite clear from the little exercise we've done that you and I, being speakers of the same language, got the same answers, so we must know the same rules. There's a very good reason for that. We couldn't communicate unless we did know the same rules. Those are the rules of our language, and they're the rules that enable us to both encode the sentences we produce and decode them when someone else says them. Notice these rules are not descriptive. They don't tell you what to do. It's not like someone's come along and told you must do this and you must do that. And I have to tell you that the word Nick is not an English word. Nobody's ever told you that. No one has prescribed it. They're just descriptive. They tell us what it is that we know. The other thing, and it's something I hinted at earlier, is that that knowledge is totally unconscious. We can bring it out. You can have a good look at it, but most of the time it's completely unconscious. We don't know that we know it. And it's interesting that we know so much that we don't know that we know. Well, we don't actually need to know that we know it, but that's why we're going down this track of looking at the English language, because it enables us to know that we know it, and I think that's fun. The other thing that's crucially important is that this knowledge, this kind of knowledge, is specifically human. No other species on the planet does this. If you were to question an earthworm and say, look, does Jill appear to Mary to dress herself or whatever, you wouldn't get a reply. And even if you take quite intelligent species, chimpanzees, orangutans, they can't do this sort of thing. We're the only humans, the only species, and as far as we know, or the only hominids. Probably our near neighbours weren't able to answer questions like this either. We can do it because we have human language. That's what makes us different in some crucial respect. If we look at what it enables us to do, it's absolutely incredible. We could not, one of the things that I always find interesting, we could not do anything about the future if we didn't have language, because language enables us to put into words what we think will happen in the future. We're able to plan, we're able to build buildings. So much of what we do would be impossible without language. If we didn't have language, we'd operate on a pretty much day-to-day business. We might have some imaginary sense that tomorrow would be like today, but the kind of large-scale things that we do are really only possible with language. So, we're saying nobody else does this. Even nice animals, none of them can do this.